Max, I want to talk about Houston. I want to talk about the Houston Cougars.
All right.
As you may know, they have a new head coach, Major Applewhite. And there is a lot of this is his first head coaching position, and there's a lot of questions about what kind of coach he's going to be. I want to invite you guys to click over to our friend Sam Conn Jr.'s article on ESPN. It was published a couple days ago, I think April 17th. The headline is Major Applewhite looks to make his mark at Houston. Search that. I know it's at the top. I think he pinned it at the top of his Twitter feed.
I've shared it on our Facebook page.
We shared it on our Facebook page. Great read. Not surprising coming from Sam, but great read. I think that he does an excellent job of illustrating exactly what kind of coach he is in the lead, which is kind of the whole goal of a profile piece, right? You want to, give them the idea in the lead. I want to read a portion of this here. Applewhite, this is from Sam Conn Jr. on ESPN.com. Quote, Applewhite, the Cougars' first-year head coach, addressed his team after a recent scrimmage. In the middle of his speech, he stopped mid-sentence when he noticed a player's eyes were aimed toward the ground instead of on the coach. Quote, eyes up, Applewhite yelled. Who are you? Get out. I don't even know who you are. Get out. Get out. End quote. The player reluctantly rose and exited the practice field. As he walked away, Applewhite emphasized the basic attention he expects. Quote, it's real simple. You come into my office, I'm going to look you dead in the eyes, show you respect, Applewhite told his team. I'm going to listen to you. Make sense? It goes both effing ways. Get your eyes up, end quote. That is, okay. This is
This is a major we don't know.
This is a drill sergeant, is what that sounds like. Now, I don't think he's out of line for expecting this kind of thing, but that is, I think he's sending a message to his players that says, listen, this is how, there's a new sheriff in town. I know that I'm not Tom Herman. I'm probably not the guy who recruited you.
Right.
But I'm your coach now.
Yep.
And I do think, I will say part of it is, I think part of it's the age. He's 38, so he's a younger head coach. And I know Tom Herman's pretty young, too. He's 41, is that right? Ish. I know he's pretty, but 38. And I know part of it's an age thing. But I think that if Bill Snyder walks up, there's going to be an immediate respect, right?
Probably,
because he's the
right?
older coach, stuff like that, skins on the wall. Major Applewhite is new guy. And so that's interesting that he's kind of trying to instill that kind of thing. The whole article is a great read. Go read it. Go read Sam Conn Jr.'s article over on ESPN.com. But it speaks to a bigger conversation about what Houston's going to look like post Tom Herman. They're now on their fourth head coach in 7 years. Is that right? Since Sumlin left?
Yeah.
Sumlin, Levine, Herman, and now Applewhite. And so they've had some pretty substantial turnover. And they, not just on the sideline, but they are now dealing with turnover on the field. Most notably is that they have to replace a quarterback. And we got to look at this. We got to look at them in the spring game, in the red and white game, this past weekend, and it gave us an idea of what Houston's going to look like. Now, first and foremost, Houston's been banged up. They've got a lot of injuries right now, so not everybody played, and so the spring game is not necessarily indicative of that. But it does speak to what to expect. Kyle Allen, unless Kyle Postma is hurt right now. He's not participating right now in practices. So, who would presume to be the biggest threat to Kyle Allen. That said, I think everybody expects Kyle Allen to win the job, right? Kyle Allen to be the quarterback.
I think so. He has all the advantages.
Exactly. Now, that said, he wasn't super sharp. And I think that this kind of now part of it is new quarterback, new system. Part of it is that he was without two of his top receivers. Linnell Bonner and Stephen Dunbar were out. They were held back. So they'll have their positions. But I do think that a lot of their season's obviously going to hinge not just on Kyle Allen, but also how well these receivers play. They're losing a fair amount of their receiving core as well.
I'm also really curious about the defense from the perspective of you lose Todd Orlando.
Mm-hmm.
What does this new group, how do they respond to the new coaching staff? Is what Ed Oliver does in the middle, which is insanely impressive.
Yeah.
Is that enough to sort of carry the defense, or are they playing? Do they play a different style? Are they high risk, high reward the way they were last year? It's gonna be really fascinating.
Well, and for all the talk, I'm glad you brought up the defense, because for all the talk about Ed Oliver, and there's a lot of talk about Ed Oliver, rightfully so, he might be the best player in Texas.
Right.
Okay. There's a lot of talk about him. He didn't play a ton during the spring, but probably because they don't want to hurt their superstar, right? I am really kind of concerned about the linebackers. Yeah. They lose a lot. They lose Tyus Bowser. They are they're making they're sending Dwan Hines inside, from outside to inside, and he's going to line up there with Matthew Adams. This is a relatively green linebacker core, and I know that you don't worry about stuffing the run when you've got a guy like Ed Oliver, right. But at the same time, you've got to have these linebackers there, because otherwise, all we'll do is say, let's just triple team Oliver and run right around him. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
The linebacker core, I think, is going to be an issue for Houston, and a big question mark heading into it. They've plenty of experience in the secondary. They've got the superstar up front. That middle of the defense is what's ultimately, I think, going to tell the tale for Houston. As far as expectations are concerned, look, expectations are super high. Yeah, expectations are
in that article,
sky high. There's a great
records that they expect, and I'm like, okay. I think he can do it, but it's a high bar.
There's a very, very, very high bar, and not just from Major Applewhite, who is somebody who expects a lot of himself,
right,
and expects a lot of his team, but from the administration. There is a ESPN.com, via an open records report, revealed got an email from the school president, Renu Kador, I believe is how you pronounce it. It says, quote, "In order to be relevant, we need to have a 10-2 season this year," end quote. Every year, end quote. Every year.
That's so
You're
hard.
saying 10 wins every year. I don't care if you're playing in the, in the Dominican League. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Going 10-2 is difficult. Winning 10 games every year is incredible. But Applewhite has, they also talk to the boosters who say the same thing. But Applewhite knows it. Applewhite knows. He's like, listen, 10 is probably a little bit too high, but anything less than 8, and he's on the hot seat.
Yeah.
And that's kind of insane to speak about for a first-time head coach.
Yeah, first year too.
Look, Houston's got the talent. If they find the positions offensively, the weapons offensively, if Duke Catalon, their running back, has a big year, they're going to be just fine. There are a lot of moving parts. I don't think that a coach change is enough to lower the expectations. I think the expectations is every year you're contending for the American Athletic Conference, and I think this year is no different. I think they're going to be a contender. Is 10 wins a little rich for my blood? Yeah, 10 wins is a little rich for me.
That's nothing to sneeze at. That is hard.
10 wins is a little rich for me. That said, I think that's where the bar is for this Houston program, and you can thank guys like Kevin Sumlin, guys like Tony Levine, guys like Tom Herman for putting that bar there.
Yeah.
That's what we think.